So today's webinar topic is going to be a Coalition Member 101 series focused on Coalition Member introduction. So this is going to be really great for some of those people in your coalition who either are not sure they want to become a member, so maybe those people who you're trying to kind of recruit. This could be a good video for your brand new members who want to get their feet wet, just kind of trying to understand where to start with their work and their time within the coalition. So that's going to be our focus today. The Coalition Member 101 series in general. This is going to be a 5-episode series. Each episode will build upon the last. So hopefully by the end of the 5th episode, your coalition members who have attended, watched, will have a very good understanding of how to be an effective member and how to really help out the coalition grow and execute its goals and objectives, right? That's really what we want. So that's going to be the plan for Coalition Member 101 series. I wanted to make sure everyone kind of knew a little bit about that, especially because, like I said, we do record our webinars. So these are great to share with your members after the fact and be able to send them and say, hey, you're a new member with us. We'd love for you to know what you're doing, basically, right? We don't want to just throw them into some work that we're doing. We want to make sure that they're comfortable, they know what they're doing, and they don't have any questions. This is a great place to start them out in because they're going to learn everything and anything that they might need. So today's purpose is very introductory level. We want to get your feet wet. We want you to basically have an understanding of the coalition and the different levels of membership that you could maybe participate or be a member within. So that's going to kind of be our goal today. So we're going to kind of go through, what is a volunteer? So what's at that volunteer level for the coalition? What is a coalition member? So sometimes those first two can tend to blend together depending on how your coalition is structured. Then we're going to get into what is a sector rep. So, being able to make an educated decision about whether or not you think you are a sector representative and you can become one of those within your coalition. Then we're going to go into what is a board member, the duties, different types of things like that, and whether or not that's a accurate representative that you feel like you can fill. And then we're going to kind of close out today with kind of recapping everything. So that's going to be kind of what level of membership is really right for me. So if I'm a new coalition member, I might need to know the different areas within I Can Function first to be able to make the right choice on where I should be in one of these levels. Different coalitions, though, we recognize function very differently. These might not be the exact same levels of membership that you have within your coalition. You might just straight up have coalition members and that might be it. That is completely fine, but we want to make sure that you have at least a good knowledge of these different areas to be able to figure out which area is right for you in terms of your membership and being that effective coalition member that we want you to be. So for kind of background, we did have a webinar last year on how to be an effective coalition member. It was very basic. It kind of covered a little bit of what we're going to cover today. So they are quite similar. But everyone loved that webinar and they said how much they would love to have a video that would go into, really membership basics that they could give their members. So that's why we're here for this series. Like I said, today's video is very introductory, so a great one for your new members, people who don't know if they want to be a member. Just make sure that this is something that you give them with the caveat, this is not how every coalition functions, but this is how, our coalition functions in comparison type thing. So just keep that in mind. So today we're going to start with walking through our different levels of membership. We want you to feel comfortable leaving this webinar knowing, I just want to be a coalition member. I can only give enough of myself to function at that level. Or, hey, I want to be a sector representative and I can only give enough to function at that level. We want you to feel we want you to feel comfortable choosing between these. It is okay to feel that, hey, I can be 2 of these. I can be, maybe even 3 of these. And that's because as they're designed in the circles here, you'll notice that if you're the executive board, a lot of times your roles, responsibilities, duties might fall within these other areas as well. So you're going to have the same duties as a coalition member. You might have the same duties as a sector representative because all those things kind of build upwards in a pyramid form. What we had was 2 people saying about 1 to 3 hours. And we had, one person say coalition staff, which I'm pretty sure most of you are coalition staff anyway. So I get that this 1 to 3 hours might be what the typical member comes to you and says they can volunteer. That's pretty standard. You might occasionally see, some of your 4 to 7 hours, depending. Rarely ever do we see more than 10, right? We'd love to see that more. We'd love to see someone who can come and really just give us that time, right? But it really just depends on what they have going on in their life. We all have to respect each other's time, and we don't want to take too much of someone's time if that's not something they can give us, right? So that was a great kind of way to start out today, because I want to start with the general community section within our different levels here. So our general community is not quite a membership level, but this is just going to be very basic, the people that we're serving, right? These are the people who we live with, share a community with. They might be working in our community. They might be living in our community, as well as, partners or other groups that could even be, in community within the coalition. So like I said, partnerships, maybe shared or mutual focuses or goals. That's going to be our general community when we look at our diagram there on the end. So that's who we're trying to serve ideally, right? So with that, I know that one was kind of very basic, general. That's going to then flow into our next level, which is where I want to start today, and that is, what is a volunteer? Like I said, some coalitions don't necessarily have this level. They just consider it coalition member. But I tend to think that there's a little bit of a difference between the two. And that's because, to me, a volunteer is a person who freely offers to take part in an enterprise or undertake a task. Someone who's basically just there as a body, right? They might be someone who comes 1 month to an event that I need help with, and as a volunteer, then I might not see them again for 2-3 months until I have another event that they're like, oh yeah, that's cool, I'll come help you guys, right? They're not someone who's there at meetings. They're not someone who, has a stake in what the coalition is doing, really. They're just there as a volunteer, a body that I might need in certain occasions. Others tend to consider this volunteer level, like I said, as a coalition member. So when we're looking at our diagram, this is how I had it set up before. However, some coalitions tend to see it this way. They just go straight from general community right into coalition members. And that's fine. If that's how you want to organize your coalition, if that's how your coalition does organize their membership, that is completely fine as well. Because if to you a coalition member is just someone who shows up to maybe a meeting once every 2 months, comes to a few events as volunteer, that is perfectly fine as well. Because to me, what is a coalition member? I tend to think can be multiple different things. So before I move any further, I want to know in your own words, what is a coalition member? So in the chat really quick, if you could for me, write down just something quick. It could be a couple words. What do you think a coalition member is? What is the definition to you? So that's where I was kind of going with this, though, is there is not really one exact definition. Okay, so Chris said a community member who has a desire to collaborate with others in the community to develop a plan to address substance abuse prevention in the community and then begin to take action. I really like your description and your definition, Chris. I think this is a great way to look at it because it really is. It's someone who wants to get involved and collaborate, right? Whether it's wanting to make your community a better place, whether it is the fact that your job and the work of your job maybe aligns with the focus of the coalition, whether it's your outcomes, your goals, or your plan to address substance abuse prevention. It could be someone who just believes in the mission and says, hey, you guys are trying to make our community a better place, or you're trying to reduce underage drinking. I highly believe in that. I want to be a member. As well as just someone who volunteers. It could just be a straight up volunteer who's a parent. They're like, my kid goes to school here. You're doing some great events that my child likes to go to. I want to be someone who's involved in that and continues that because that's something my child likes, right? So Matt also said someone with a stake in the issues or the problems. Again, I think that's right on it, Matt. I think you and Chris really demonstrated this well, that, it could be a variety of different issues that you can summarize or give a definition of a coalition member about. It really just depends on how that person perceives themselves as a member. So awesome. Glad you guys had those opinions and input. So when it comes to responsibilities as a member, thinking back to our different levels and how they build upon each other, coalition members are going to be responsible for the general oversight and kind of management of the coalition, typically including but not limited to kind of community engagement. So making sure that activities are taking place and they are carried out, right? The planning aspect that you were kind of talking about, Chris. The fiscal decision making, again, back to kind of what you were saying, Chris, developing that plan and then taking action and carrying it out, right? And then again, we have another one, which is just strategy development and implementation. Sometimes, like I said, this does not get to the coalition member level. This might be something that happens more at the board level, more at the sector level. Sometimes even the staff level tends to start this and then takes it to their coalition, which that's okay too. Different coalitions function differently. So we don't want to say, you're going to be responsible for doing all these things. We want to say that you could be responsible for acting within some of these different areas and carrying out some of these things. So sample duties now, variety. Your coalition could make you do 2 of these. Your coalition could say, nope, these are all of our duties for you and you have to carry these out. Like I said, different coalitions, different duties, different kind of operating. So a lot of times our coalition members, though, are going to be responsible for planning and setting priorities. Like, again, Chris, back to your planning for substance abuse prevention and actually taking action. Leading the coalition. So our coalition members technically should be the leaders, right? I mean, you are the coalition, therefore you should be the leaders. A lot of times members tend to lean on staff, sometimes it's a little too much. And in some cases, that's okay. Some cases it's needed. But in other times, you technically are the coalition. You are the community. You should be leading the coalition. Evaluating the contribution the coalition makes, maybe even connecting to the community. Like I said, you are the coalition members. That means you are from the community. You are your representative for yourself, for maybe some other people in your community who don't have a voice or can't be at the table. So make sure that you're connecting with some of those other community members and making sure that what the coalition is going to be working on and doing is well accepted by the masses, right? Recruiting new members. This is one I really wanted to hit on because I think this is a big one. Sometimes coalitions tend to get in ruts where their membership starts to dwindle, or maybe they're losing some members, can't really get any traction on new members. Use your members that you already have to recruit new members, whether it's telling them, hey, maybe to the next meeting, everyone has to bring a friend or a colleague. Maybe you have an event where you're straight up just there to talk to people and ask them if they'd be willing to, come be a part of the coalition, right? Use them as recruiting tools. That's going to be your best option there. Participation in coalition events, activities, that's a given. You're part of the coalition. You should be at activities and events as much as you can. Representing the coalition within your sphere of personal influence and responsibilities. That kind of is a huge one as well. Making sure that you're not just there to sit there and look pretty. You are there, you have knowledge. Everyone has their own opinions, their own ideas, their own knowledge and skills. Use them. The coalition wants you there because they value those. So make sure you are there and representing within that sphere and using your own knowledge to really help influence and have those responsibilities. Educating the community on the coalition and its projects. The best media, the best way to get information out there is word of mouth. You are the coalition. You are the word of mouth that everyone will listen to. So making sure to educate the community on the coalition in a positive way is going to be very helpful. Setting the budget, this tends to be sometimes at the coalition level, sometimes more at the higher level. So I wouldn't worry about that one too much. Next, we have just allocation of resources. Again, a little bit of a higher level. Some coalitions do it at just the general member level, so that might be something you have to do. And then as well as supervision and management of staff assigned to the coalition as applicable. So what I like to kind of emphasize with this one is going to be, as the staff, or not as the staff, sorry, as the coalition members, you guys are responsible for the coalition's tasks. Whether it is you assigning them to Bob sitting next to you and then at the next meeting holding Bob accountable and supervising that, in order to make sure that the coalition gets done what it needs to, sometimes that has to happen. Now we know sometimes it's terrible to have to be the bad guy and say, hey, you didn't do your job. Why didn't you do it? And having to supervise and kind of be that manager role. But sometimes it needs to be done because in order for the coalition to be successful, we have to be successful and we have to do, our duties so that we can continue our work, right? The next level we're going to go into is what is a sector representative? So obviously, maybe if you decide that coalition member, you're doing really good, you love being a coalition member, but you're like, hey, I have more skills. I want to kind of take my membership within the coalition a step further. I want to become a sector representative. I want to have more responsibilities. Great. We would love to have you here. We'd love to have you take on one of those roles because every coalition does have to have a sector representative, typically, especially if you're a DFC grantee, a sector representative for each of the 12 listed here. If you feel like you can fulfill one of these, make sure to let your coalition staff, maybe whether it's staff or kind of your coalition leader, know. Say, hey, I know I'd be a really great, education sector rep. Awesome, because you know what? They might not have one already. Or, they might want another one. It is okay to have more than one. The more we can get, the more input we can get from the community from all these different sectors, the better our work is going to be coming out. Because the more input we have, the better we can respond to different changes within our community. For instance, if we don't have a law enforcement sector at the table for a meeting and we're talking about implementing a new policy, guess what? We might not have thought of something that the law enforcement would think of when we're trying to implement a new policy, right? Like I said, your opinion, your strengths are valid. We want to know what they are. We want you to be acting and sharing your information within your realm of influence, as well as within your personal realm of influence as well. So you might be a law enforcement officer, but you might also just be a parent, and sometimes that's okay. We want you for who you are. We want you to share with us your knowledge that you have. So when we're looking at a sector representative, these are going to be representatives who can commit on behalf of their sector or organization to act within their own sphere of influence to further the mission of the coalition through communication with the sector reps. Sorry, left a word out there, sector reps. Typically, this does not include much more work than the coalition member level. It just means that you're going to be basically on a piece of paper saying, I am the education rep, I am the law enforcement rep. However, you will then be responsible for either reporting information from your job or from your sector to the coalition and vice versa, because we want to make sure the coalition has ties to different organizations, different sectors in the community, so everyone's working together in a cohesive kind of system, right? We don't want the law enforcement to be working on something and us not know about it at the coalition level and us to be kind of counteracting what they're trying to do, right? Or something crazy like that. We also don't want to be working on the same thing and not knowing about it, because then we're doing double the work for what? If we know that the law enforcement or maybe the local government even is trying to pass this policy, why are we doing double the work on it if we don't have to? Let's meet with them. Let's piggyback off of them and what they're doing and provide them any, support that they may need. Well, and as opposed to us doing the work on the side and double dipping, right? We're trying to double count or, double up efforts. It's a waste of everyone's time. So let's make sure that we are acting within our realm of influence here, but not overstepping and not, dismissing people that we might not want input from. The nice thing about what we have for you on our member portal is we actually have all of those sectors listed in the document. So this is just kind of a screen grab from it. But what the document is going to show you is the sector title, types of organizations that you could find people from to represent that sector, and then typically how they can help the coalition and what they can do, right? This is very helpful, especially for those of you who might be coalition members and aren't quite sure what sector you could represent. Or even if you are a sector representative now, maybe you were told, hey, you're going to be the parent sector representative. And you're like, okay, well, like, what does that mean? What do I have to do? Come over, feel free to look at this and say, okay, well, I can, communicate results of student surveys. I can create parent impact statements. I can address, other things related to the parent sector and how that is involved in our coalition's work. So make sure that we are looking at our 12 sectors and thinking about which one can I be involved in. If this is something that you don't feel like you have time to dedicate to, though, for the coalition, that's okay too. We will respect your opinion and say, hey, we understand this might be a little bit more information, time consuming for you. That's okay. At the same time, though, if you are not able to represent your sector, see if you can find someone else who can, or someone else who can maybe help you and say, hey, you go to the meeting this month, I'll go to the meeting next month, and we'll kind of share duties. That way, if you don't have a lot of time, that's a good way to get around it. So feel free to take a moment, look at these, and I think just maybe pop in the chat function what sector you think you would be able to represent in your coalition. Or if not, if there's more than one, but more than one, put just one. I just kind of want to see what sectors you guys feel like you would fall into personally and kind of where we're sitting today with our attendees. Awesome. Chris, also a parent. Matt, youth serving organization. Awesome. And yeah, typically that's where we tend to see, our staff or other people, we fall under that, whether it's substance abuse organization or we fall under a different sector, as Chris said, her being a parent. She has those views as a parent to still be able to contribute to that sector, right? Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Unless there are any other questions you guys have, I'll kind of pause for a second here if you need to ask anything. But our next and kind of last area or level of membership that we're going to talk about today is going to be, what is a board member, or what is the board member representative responsible for, right? The kind of technical description that we tend to go by is going to be a coalition board member acts in good faith through financial and personnel oversight, to ensure that strategically and locally identified community needs are addressed by the activities of the coalition. This typically happens through fulfilling their duties, as well as by representing the coalition in their given community sector, area, or organization. So, as you might see based on the description, a board member tends to encompass all of those other membership levels that we kind of just talked about. We still want you to act as if a sector rep within your realm of influence, right? We still want you to participate and be involved in the coalition member level of activities and planning and things that we're doing there. We also sometimes just want you to be a volunteer at events or show up for the coalition, right? The big thing with a board member, becoming a board member, is being aware of your duties. Like I said, again, I keep going back to this, but every coalition operates differently. Your communities are different, therefore your coalition is going to operate a little different. These could be some of the duties you are expected to fulfill as a board member. So if you are someone who likes to take on a challenge, likes more responsibility, board members probably a great area for you to be within your coalition. The other thing is asking yourself, how much time can I give to my coalition? That's why I asked that question in the beginning, because someone who might only be able to give 1 to 3 hours a month of volunteer time might not be able to be a board member, just because of how much time that goes into fulfilling the duties of this area, of this level of membership. Some things could be, acting in good faith to ensure coalition's mission is strategically funded, and staffed. So this is very basic oversight, right? Could also be something such as acting as a liaison with the coalition's fiscal agent. This, a lot of times, from what I have seen, is not a huge thing that happens. However, other things such as monitoring funds on behalf of the coalition, or being part of that budget committee. A lot of times board members are on that budget committee where they do have to look at the funds and where the coalition is spending money, right? Other things could include, supervise coalition executive director with the coalition fiscal agent. Participate in ongoing evaluation. This is a big one for our board members, simply because, like I said, our board members can sometimes be on other committees, tend to be those people who have a very high want to be involved. They love to be in charge. They like to, look at that high level of information coming in, going out from the coalition. So board members have a little bit more responsibility, but if that is something that you are willing to take on, more power to you. All coalitions need board members. Board members also typically tend to have terms. I would suggest, if your coalition doesn't, you probably should invoke some terms, whether it's a 2-year term or a 1-year term for your board members, because sometimes with power, having kind of this oversight of the coalition, sometimes board members can tend to get carried away. Some board members can get run down, and the last thing we want is our board members getting run down, right? Because when they get run down and they do finally leave, they leave for good. And we don't want that. Just because you're not a board member anymore doesn't mean you can't still be a coalition member. So just maybe making sure that we have those terms in place and have kind of those different functionalities in case people no longer want to be a board member. So with that's kind of our last level of coalition membership. I want to end today kind of just recapping, talking through some things to really help you guys figure out what is the right level of membership for you. The coalition tend to lose members every day, and sometimes it's just par for the course. If it just wasn't a right fit, that's okay too. Maybe, life just got in the way and something came up. Coalitions tend to lose members, like I said, sometimes every day. Might be a great month where you lose none. However, to help curb this, we really think it's helpful to make sure that as members, we are acting within our means and our skills, because we want them to be enjoying the work. We want to be, helping the coalition, and we don't want it to feel like a chore. So that's why knowing what the right level of membership for you is very important, because we don't want you to become someone who, in a sense, hates the coalition because it was just way too much work. We want to really get away from that. Now, to find the right level of membership for you, we have to go back to our diagram here. It's going to require thinking back on as well as everything we've been discussing today. So it might also help to talk with your coalition members and ask them even about their experiences with some of these levels. So if you're thinking about going into a sector representative and you're not currently, talk to a current sector rep about how they feel, whether it's more work, whether or not that they think you can do it. Feel free to do that. The other thing is, don't hesitate to ask your coalition staff or talk to them. Your coalition staff is not technically part of the coalition levels because they're more of an oversight. They're there to kind of provide you that technical assistance. We don't want you to think of them as, the center of our existence. They're more there for support. So feel free to ask them. If you're not sure which level of membership is right for you, ask them, talk to them. They might be able to say, hey, you're really good at some media stuff, and you said you can only give us 2 hours a month. Well, guess what? We would love your help or your input on some of our social media posts, maybe some of our newsletter stuff, other things like that. They might know exactly where you could fit in. The other thing to keep in mind is as your staff guides you, there might be certain areas where you're able to better succeed in. Asking them, where they think you'll function the best is going to hopefully lead to more success for you, which leads to success for the coalition, which leads to success for the community, right? So that's why we really want to say that being there, talking to people, talking to your members, talking to your staff, just having those communications lanes wide open will help you become a better member. And then lastly, maybe just even asking yourself to answer these quick questions, writing it down on a piece of paper and saying, how much time can I give? Really, everything goes back to that because time is money and, not everyone has time. So if I can't give my time, what else can I give? Whether it's my skills, whether it's my knowledge on something, what is it I can give? Next is, do you relate to one of the 12 sectors? And if so, would you be willing to represent this sector? Like I said, it's not too much more work than just becoming a normal coalition member, but there is a little bit more responsibilities involved. So just always think of that as well. And then the next one we have is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? We didn't go into this too much today, but I was kind of hinting at it a second ago with talking to your coalition staff and saying, hey, these are my strengths. These are the skills I have. Do you think it would be logical for me to become a sector rep? Do you think it's logical for me to help out the coalition in another way, like helping with media posts or maybe helping write a new policy or something else that we're working on? Really make sure that you're using your skills, because if you're not, you feel like you're wasting your time, and we don't want you to feel that way, because eventually that might lead you down a path of not wanting to come back to our coalition, not wanting to be a member anymore. So make sure that you're vocal and saying, hey, these are my skills, these are my strengths, use me, right? I'm here, I want to be here, use me. What are your weaknesses? It's also great to know those as well. Simply because if you're not good at something, why would we want to waste your time and the coalition's time doing it, right? So if you're not good at writing social media posts and doing media stuff, maybe we shouldn't have you helping out with that, right? Because that's not a good use of your time and your skills. And then lastly, what are your goals as a coalition member? And how do those line up with the coalition's goals and objectives? Everyone has different goals, different things they want to do in life. If you're just there as a member because, maybe you're a parent in the community, you want to make the community a better place, that's okay. That can be your personal goal as a member. You could also have another goal, like let's say you're the education sector rep and you're like, I'm here because I want to make sure that any new policies the coalition is working on keeps teachers in mind, or keeps, the school board in mind, whatever it is. You can have those goals. Just really think back to, why are you here and how does this align to what the coalition's trying to achieve? Because if you're not really sure why you're here, maybe that's something you need to talk about with a coalition staff member, another coalition member themselves, because we don't want you to be unsure of your work and unsure of what you're doing with the coalition, because sometimes that can lead, again, down to you not wanting to be a member anymore. We want you to be comfortable, know why you're here, and love the reason. Thank you all for joining us today. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Today's webinar will be emailed to all of those who attended as well as those who did not attend. And again, if you're looking for a video link, you can go to our member portal as well. Thank you all for joining and have a great rest of your day.